To the Zoning Board of Appeals October 19th meeting. Let's see, we'll call the meeting to order. And our first applicant tonight is Martha A. Nugent at 34 Country Club Circle, Scituate, Mass. Requests a special permit to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6 and/or Section 610.2B of the Scituate zoning bylaw for the creation of a single-family lot which will have frontage on at least at least 50 feet on 568 First Parish Road, Assessors Map 31, Block 1, Parcel 39.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Maravito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicant for this project. The applicant currently owns all of the land shown on this plan. There are existing houses here at number 568. This lot 1 contains 10.29 acres of land. The purpose of this application is to ask the zoning board to create a lot with 50 feet of frontage and at least 2 acres of land. Under the zoning bylaw, this is blue color, a 50-foot lot that only has 50 feet of frontage. However, because it has twice the land area, it can still only have one single-family home. It cannot be a duplex. Perform soil and percolation tests in this area for the septic system. The purpose of this application, again, is ask the board to simply approve this lot. Should this be approved, this does not give the owner the ability to go up and build a house on it tomorrow. We still have to file the septic system on design plan with the Board of Health. There are no wetlands on the site, but there is a stormwater permit that would have to be approved by the planning board. Stormwater permit is under the general bylaw in Scituate. What that says in essence is that once you go from the woods to an area where you have roof and pavement and lawn, the increase in the volume of water that's generated by the removal of those items will not leave the site. It has to be recharged back on the site. The planning board does review that. They typically send it up for review by an outside engineering company to review our work as well. Once that's done and that's approved, then someone would be able to file for it. This application this evening is the first step in that process. It will be serviced by town water, and then we have its own septic system. So with that, I think I'm ready to answer the questions that you have.
I don't have any questions.
It seems to be pretty straightforward with the 50-foot frontage lot in the bylaw.
It is straightforward.
And just to keep in mind, like you said, that the lot cannot be further broken down
That's correct.
in the future.
What he's saying is that there's a note on the plan that says this lot can never be further subdivided. That's a deed restriction that goes with the land. It's also recorded in the registry of deeds.
Bob, did you have any questions?
No, apparently the 50-foot minimum is maintained all the way through to the rear part of the lot, which is a requirement. 80,000 square feet is correct. It appears that there's plenty of distance through the house when the house is laid out in that regard. So I don't think there are any problems at all.
Any questions from the...
Does this make the existing house non-conforming?
If you could just state your name and address. Thank you. And then, what was your question?
Does this make the existing house there non-conforming? How much frontage is on that?
No.
They still have
Almost 200 feet.
yeah.
More than 200 feet.
It's about 205 feet. And the width of the lot through the house has to be 175, which they do have.
The lot that he's talking about is also, may not be wetlands, but water flows off of that lot. Every spring comes over the stone wall like it's a waterfall. It's very wet. They did a house on the other side of the main house last year, that you put all kinds of restrictions on because of the water and so forth on the long driveway going up. That driveway drains onto First Parish Road and runs down towards Maple Street to a surface drain. To a shallow little, what used to be the gullies there,
Yeah.
take up the water. That other lot runs constantly. This will do the same thing. This is not dry land. I would question that it occurred. It's never occurred
Again,
before.
they will be going in front of the planning board to look at the stormwater runoff too, and
Yeah, they built the other house and nothing was done. It still runs off. This is what happens. They build a house and we're always gonna deal with it at some point. This is a known problem existing today. So how can you say that this is,
well, what we're looking at tonight is it a subdividable lot with a 50-foot frontage from a zoning perspective? And yes, it meets the frontage, it meets the requirements of zoning.
can they run
We-
multiple driveways off of that?
Off this driveway? No, they can only have one, it's one dwelling for that, for the lot number 2. And only one dwelling, not a two-family.
No, I'm saying, but could they use that driveway to access more land in the back?
You mean the right of way? Right, he's talking about right of way out back.
No. That would be a different permit, and that's not here.
Or they could put into that?
Basically, what we're looking at, and the reason there weren't a lot of questions from the board, is there isn't a lot we can do here. We have a bylaw that was put into place in the town in order to allow individuals with property with frontage to be able to access their back land with a 50-foot frontage lot, a pork chop, any number of names we have for it. This fits every criteria in that bylaw. The question of stormwater runoff, and that sort of thing, is for another board. We're just looking at the dimensions of this lot. Does it meet our bylaw? In terms of what they could do in the future, this is only impacting Lot 2 on the plan, the portion that's outlined in yellow. The remaining portion of the land, they could do a number of things with. There is an existing dwelling. In order to put a street in and access this land with a development, they'd have to probably take down, I'm not 100% familiar with the contour of the land, but they'd have to probably take down the house and put in a street, and they'd have to be uplands, etc. But according to the plan here, this registered engineer has presented to us, there's 10 acres of upland in Lot 1. That would suggest to me that at some time in the future, something could be done there. What we do here tonight doesn't impact that at all. Lot 2 is 80,000 square feet, what's necessary in the zone for a 50-foot frontage lot. It's twice the lot size, only one house, so it's half the build-out that could be allowed in the district. It's something that the applicant gives back in order to get the relief that they're looking for the frontage. But the question of water runoff, where the house will be sited, et cetera, is not before us tonight. It simply is this lot dimensionally within the bylaw. Can we create the lot? Yep.
Yes.
Peter Montanari, 588 First Parish. I can back up everything David says about the water runoff at the right next door to him. That lot right there is not conforming because they have part of my land on there. The jog down for the triangle touching 588 is mine, and I've worked it for 33 years, and I've been paying taxes on it. So if you remove that square footage away, it drops below 80,000 square feet. Now I know all he has to do is move the lines and bump the lot back a little bit, but
You're claiming ownership of land
the
that,
triangle piece, I'll show you.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I own this back lot here behind the Murphys. This is David Westman's, this is mine. This piece here, this triangle piece that runs along the stone hill, the stone wall, is mine. I've been paying taxes on it for 33 years.
that's a hard one to go by when an engineer has presented us with a plan, we've got a deed, we've got, I think that if you wanted to, we need to have some evidence to that.
Well, I went into the assessors board years ago and I said, hey, look, I have the back lot, and I have this triangle piece is there. He flipped the map and said, that back lot goes right over the triangle and he goes right in. I said, okay, and we're good.
That's
Not
the
necessarily.
assessor is not an engineer who's got a stamp on it that shows us a plan
Right.
that shows us that you own the land. And
Well,
we don't have a deed before us or anything else
Well,
that
we
suggests
do
that.
have a deed, but, you know, none of us are experts in
Right.
reading deeds. This is the expert in reading the deed.
No problem.
Right, okay, so you know, Paul, first of all, you need, did you give your name to Annie?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I must not have heard it. Paul is the one who takes the deed and creates the plot plan, and he's certified that this is accurate. So if you've got a dispute as to ownership of that little triangle, you got a different issue for a court, or the land court,
I
or,
doubt he'll even get that far, he'll just bump that yellowed out lot.
well, I don't know, yeah, you know, I don't know. It's not, it's basically not our issue.
Right.
We have to accept, this is a certified copy by a registered, you know, land surveyor who tells us this is where the lot line is. And if there's a dispute between you and you know, Ms. Nugent, you kind of have to take it up there. But right now, we have to accept what Paul says, that that's part of, you know, the Nugent property, and that's included. I don't know if you take that out in the calculation, whether or not there would be 80,000 square feet, but what's the,
No, there would be. Sarah, just for the record,
yeah,
this whole parcel, in conjunction with some other abutting property, was the subject of a flexible open space development plan about 7 or 8 years ago. And we came in at the end of that to do the actual engineering design. The topographic information and the property line survey information was provided to us by the owner of the property at the time. Russ Engineering did not do this perimeter survey. It was done by another land surveyor.
okay,
And we simply took his information, so.
okay. It's kind of an interesting problem, but kind of, I hate to say, not particularly our problem at this point.
No,
We
at
have
this
to
point, we have
accept
to
it.
go with what we have.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Okay. That leaves us with a motion, if anyone so desires.
I'll make the motion. I move that we approve the 50-foot frontage lot as requested by Martha Nugent pursuant to MGL Chapter 48, Section 6, and/or Section 610.2B for the creation of a single-family house lot at 568 First Parish Road in Scituate, as per represented on the plan produced by Ross Engineering and dated September 12th, 2017.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Whose turn, Annie?
I think it's me.
Mine?
I
Yeah,
didn't
okay.
have, I think you had one last time.
Yeah, 6. We're gonna have
We're all gonna
plenty.
have two.
We're all gonna have 2. Okay. Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
If there's a dispute on ownership, they ought to get that resolved. No, but they ought to get resolved before it goes on record. They ought to appeal that.
Very interesting.
Sure.
Second application is Paul and Bonnie Turcott of 61 Seaside Road in Scituate, request a special permit in accordance with the Scituate zoning bylaw, section 470.6F and 950.2B, and a finding in accordance with the Scituate zoning bylaw, sections 810.2 and 950.2B, and Mass General Law, chapter 40A, section 6, and or any other relief that the Board of Appeals may grant, to raise a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling on a pre-existing non-conforming lot, 61 Seaside Road, Scituate, assessors map 28, lot 4, parcels 4 and 5, and to reconstruct a single-family dwelling thereon which will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming
Thank you. Attorney Jeff DeLisi with Ornberger, DeLisi and Harris. I'm here with Paul Maravito tonight of Ross Engineering, and my clients, Bonnie and Paul Turcott, in the second row back there.
Thank you.
By way of background, Bonnie and Paul got married in July. And the very next day bought this property, and the concept is to make it their home. I just want to, by way of background, I think for context for the board, because Paul's, the property, there's some stuff going on, and I just want to make sure that the board can understand. I'll explain my colors.
Schemes?
This is all context, doesn't change anything. The existing house constructed in 1920, according to the assessor's records, is a two-story, three-bedroom house with a full concrete basement located on the ocean off of Egypt Beach Road. I gave the board in my packets some Google Earth photos, which I think would aid in this concept, along with the portion of the assessor's map, which I just handed to you. But basically, there's two paper streets on this property. Looking at the document I just gave you, those are noted in green. The property itself is in yellow and consists primarily of a pond, which is in purple, and then land both east and west of the house that's shown on the assessor map. And Paul will get into his plan in a minute and explain where this is for the public. Just want to give the board an understanding. Access to the property is over the pink area, which is known as Driftwood Lane. It's private right-of-way. And so the area in green, being the paper streets, has never been constructed. It just shows up on a plan as well as on Paul's plan because it's in the record plan. The house is old, outdated, not compliant with FEMA flood standards. First floor elevation is not quite 15 feet. The elevation required by FEMA is 17 feet. The plan initially was to lift the existing house onto piles to make it compliant, but as the Turcotts interviewed their contractors, they realized that it was cost prohibitive to do that. So they've decided to raise and reconstruct. The property is located in the Residence R3 zoning district, the floodplain watershed protection overlay district. Paul is calling the front yard setback off of the paper street known as Seaside Road, which is essentially the beach. And that's consistent with what Scituate has been calling front yards, as far as I know. The dimensional nonconformities of the property are that front yard setback and the two side yard setbacks. The Turcotts are proposing to pull the reconstructed dwelling further back from all three nonconforming sidelines, and thereby making the proposed structure less nonconforming in those areas. The house would be elevated onto piles to be above the FEMA flood elevation and fully compliant with the height requirements of the zoning bylaw. We're looking for a finding under section 810.2 because the gross floor area of the house will increase from 1,932 square feet to 2,778 square feet, which is in excess of the bylaw's requirement as of right. Paul has it on his plan as being 43.8% increase. It's also necessary to obtain a special permit under the floodplain to raise and reconstruct the pre-existing dwelling. And a notice of intent was filed. Conservation has a hearing scheduled next week, and if Paul has anything to add on his plan, now's the time to do so.
Okay.
Unless the board
Can I,
has a
before,
question.
because
Yep.
Paul will maybe clarify. So, as I, and I was a little confused on all of this, so,
It's tough to see on a plan.
yeah, so, so on this plan,
Yeah. So,
177, 176, 175, is it also 174 and 73? Did I miss that?
so what it is they pretty much turn 174 and 173 into Lot A and B, which is on the next page. Two record plans, Sarah, because there's two parcels.
Okay,
So lots 174 and 173 were essentially halved. And the left side of each of those two lots is
Just me.
Lot
yeah,
B.
okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so they this owns part of 174 and 173?
Yeah, so if you look right here, Sarah, this, like
Yes.
174, 173.
We're looking at this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
And so Lot B was, those two lots were divided to create A and B, and this would be Lot B,
okay,
in addition to the three lots on the record plan that you just noted.
okay. So the purple
Yeah.
is what?
So the purple is a pond.
The purple is a
And
pond.
if you look at the Google Earth
Right.
photo, you can see it.
Yep,
So the pond essentially prevents the utilization of the paper street known as Samoset Ave as access. And so therefore, the access is pulled in off of Driftwood Street, in between number 5 Driftwood and number 59 Seaside.
okay, but that's kind of here nor there, isn't it? Because they have a right-of-way.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
just want the board to understand, that's all.
Right, but they don't actually, I mean, they own part of the pond, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, and under the derelict fee statute, they own to the midpoint of Samoset Avenue, as well as to the midpoint of,
okay. And under what? Because that was one of my concerns. Under what? Which
there's
statute?
a derelict fee statute is, I'll have to get the citation for you. It's a Commonwealth statute that basically says that it's a rule of construction in title language, which Anthony were here. Essentially, what it is that when property is bound by a private way or right-of-way or a paper street, because there's no ownership per se in that paper street,
Correct.
they're deemed to own the fee in the paper street to the midpoint, subject to the rights of others to pass and repass.
Okay,
And it's a rule of construction that says almost verbatim that. And so they really actually own to the midpoint for what it's worth. It doesn't really change the analysis here much, but,
well, for me it does.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why it does, because it looks to me like you're building onto that paper street.
well, yeah, there's a portion of the deck, it's not a covered portion, and we could change that if the board would like. Neil's made this call for me in the past. I remember Collier Road, it was Mark Stewart's property on Third Cliff. There was a sewer pump house in the middle of a paper street next to his property. And the side yard setback was measured from the midpoint of that street for this very purpose. But be it as it may, we're able to change the design, but it's not, I don't think that it matters really at all because of the configuration of this land and how I explained this to you.
Well, and let me tell you why I think it does, because you still have rights in, whoever this is, he still has rights in that paper street, and so that's the only problem I have with this, is building into that paper street.
Yeah, I fully understand. I'll note that the number 5 Driftwood, shown on Paul's plan,
Number
Shows-
5, Driftwood.
shows you
Yep.
exactly kind of a similar situation where a permit was recently issued and they built a deck into the layout of the paper street. So there's definitely a, I don't want to say precedent because this board isn't bound by precedent.
No.
But there's certainly, the call's been made before in the town, but it's not a cover, so for purposes of setback
Yeah,
and building, that's not an issue because you're not building a covered area.
correct.
But like I said, we could change the design to pull that if that's what the board wants. It just didn't make, the house designer, Julie Johnson, we had the conversation with her and she said, it makes all the sense in the world to do it this way for the layout of the house and so forth, but I recognize this issue and willing to rectify it if you want. I just don't think it's gonna matter much. I think they would definitely have the right to do it so long as they're not impeding access. And when you think about it, there would be no access from Egypt Beach Road because of the pond.
Well, no, but, you know, it's still a paper street and it's still a subject to being approved and everything else. That's the only problem I have, is those two little
Yep,
steps,
Yep.
quite frankly.
yep, and
I
it
don't
could
have a
be,
problem with anything else. Looks like it's gonna be a nice design, great improvement.
we could eliminate the steps in the paper street. I'm happy to have a condition of approval to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I don't know what I'm only one,
Okay.
so.
I don't know if you guys want to hear from Paul or,
Yes, if Paul, might as well fill us in briefly. If you,
Earn your keep, Paul.
right
You did so good on the last one. It was excellent.
The, perimeter of the lot is outlined in yellow, it's 20,000 square, 20,430 square foot lot. This is the edge of the pond on the ocean side of the lot, and this is Egypt Ave down here. And you can see the pond coming around like this.
Okay.
The existing house is shown in the crosshatch area, and the orange is the layout of the house. This is a covered porch, and these are open decks on three sides of the house. So what Jeff was referring to, the open decks are around the perimeter of the house. There'd be a small landing and the stairs down. If these are allowed to be within the layout of the paper street, there'd be a set of stairs and a small landing. The setback of the existing house on the west side of the house, the existing is 8.3 feet. That's going to be increased to 9.8 feet. And on the east side of the house, the existing is 7.7. That'll be increased to 8.2 feet. Part of that reason was to be able to facilitate open decks on the two sides that could go right to the property. As Jeff said, we are scheduled for a hearing with the Conservation Commission Monday. And this is a big improvement because it will be fully compliant with FEMA as far as elevation wise and also the type of foundation. Put that all in, be pretty.
Ed, did you have any?
Two questions, just a kind of an academic question. I recognize you're using frontage on Seaside Road. You've got all the setback in the world from Egypt Beach. Couldn't you just use frontage on Egypt Beach as easily?
I'll defer to Paul on that. I think you could probably use three frontage streets, frankly. You probably could use, well, Egypt Beach, you probably could use the paper street and Seaside Road.
Right.
But, and I think Bob would confirm that in the way the town has been treated, the way he's been calling frontage off of the front yard setback has been off of the beach.
Beach, yeah.
So, but it's neither here nor there for me. Either way, you have a nonconformity, like you said, it's academic, and you're not making it any worse.
Exactly.
It's there were some questions, I started to question it, I said, well, it's a corner lot, so you have that
Right.
issue. It's two corner lot, actually.
Right.
It's also potentially subject to an average setback calculation. But the bottom line is that there's 10 different ways to slice it, and you pick one and go with it.
Well, that's kind of why I said it was academic. It's, to me, this looks like a gale. It's not, I mean, in terms of we're not intensifying any of the existing nonconformities. In fact, they're being reduced. We do have the question of the increased size and finding whether or not that is, detrimental to or significantly more detrimental. But I don't, and again, and in terms of the encroachment on Samoset, where it is uncovered, I don't know that I mean, they could build right to the lot line
With a deck.
with a deck.
absolutely.
And I would say the stairs, if they were constructed, would be constructed at the owner's peril. I mean, if they want to, if it's ever questioned by anyone, and neighbors or whatever, they may have to take them down. It's nice to know it, but with the, at least with the abandoned fee statute as described, it sounds like they'd probably.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. If you can get it to me, that'd be great, just
Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah, I'd be happy to-
I
yeah.
just think my concern is that we're permitting something that allows it to go in there, you know? If they want to put it in later at their own risk, you know, that's beyond us. But I'm not comfortable with permitting something that goes into the paper street, because there is still a house that is on C Street. You know, this one here, 112 or whatever it is, I don't even know what number it is, but,
Across Samoset.
yeah,
59.
59.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
59 C Street.
okay,
Sure, they might be, I don't know, are they here tonight, or? No.
yeah,
We spoke with them on Friday, so no issue.
yeah.
I mean, we're talking, I mean, some of the reason for the stairs are, what's the increase in elevation from first floor, 2.5 feet from what it sits now?
It's, yeah, two and a third, I think, yeah,
Okay, I mean, so there's,
2.4.
Yeah, but they don't have to be there. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
I-
thing. They could be somewhere else.
I mean,
You
there
know.
could be,
That's the whole
Can I add
point.
one thing?
just your, yeah, name for the record.
Applicant.
The front staircase is sort of set that way so we can pull under for parking. And so if it pulls across the back, it will block the parking. So that was the reason for sort of, the other one, we had it one way at one point and the other way. The one that's closer to the ocean side there isn't any reason that goes one way or the other. But in the plan, it was really to pull it around the corner a little bit so that it would make it easy to pull in underneath. There's a central staircase that's going inside,
Yeah.
Underneath there. So for bad weather to be able to pull under there, that's the reason for going around the corner.
You know, it may make sense again, but I'm not familiar with the statute, and I'm not particularly comfortable with the situation.
Well, do we grant them relief with everything but the steps, and they can,
Decide to do what they want to do.
yeah.
But I'm really
I
not
mean,
comfortable with permitting the stairs, you know, to the extent that we say, yeah, sure, go ahead, build into the street.
Well,
You
it just
know,
gives that just creates some potential for appeal of our decision, you know.
We're not gonna
We're gonna
appeal
appeal the decision
No,
on
no,
the
I
steps?
No, I don't mean,
I'm a little
someone
confused.
later could come in and say that it was improperly permitted, and therefore,
If we could just,
No, they can't appeal it after the 20 days. It's, yeah, I'm confused at
talking
what
with-
you're saying.
within the next 20 days,
Yep,
the applicant, the neighbor who's not here, the Shawls, could appeal our decision, which could slow it all down and complicate the issue. If we were to grant it
within the property lines.
within the property, the portion of the structure that is shown on the plan within the property line, and then that leaves the applicant to, if they feel confident in building into the street layout, we haven't approved it per se
yes,
here.
I would agree.
But we agree that it may be completely allowable, but we just don't, with what we have available today, we would be uncomfortable,
Yeah,
or
That way they
you're
can
saying you'd be
proceed with
uncomfortable.
their project.
yeah, I would agree.
That
That way
would
we-
be, that would be fine. Just by way of reference, Sarah, it's, chapter 183, section 58. And it says, every instrument passing title to real estate abutting a way, whether public or private, watercourse, wall, fence, or other similar linear monument, shall be construed to include any fee interest of the grantor in such way, watercourse, monument, unless, and then it goes on to say, unless he owns the other side, in which case they own the entire fee, and if he doesn't own on the other side, it's the midpoint.
Right.
So,
And I know there's,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
looked at
yeah.
one of the cases, there's a case that when it goes right through somebody's street,
Yeah.
you know, property, do they have a right to build over it to, you know, the detriment of somebody on the other side of that paper street?
Yeah, you're
And so
correct.
it's certainly an issue, and if we can make it so there's no issue, I think that's going to be better for your clients.
And we're perfectly fine with that, so.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions
You with the,
personally, or my
And
notes.
they're on town sewer down there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, so we don't have to worry about
Town
septic,
water.
the town water. As well, gas, it looks like gas, gas to the property as well.
Yes, there's gas there.
Okay.
Show them the gas.
And, Bob, do you have any questions?
I'll defer to the board on this one.
Right. Good idea. Audience, any other questions? Being none, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Move to find that the plan as proposed by the applicant, on a plan by Ross Engineering, dated September 15th, 2017, without revisions, is not increasing any nonconformities of the pre-existing conditions. Those nonconformities being side yard setback, front yard setback, lot width, and frontage.
And you want to do the special permit?
As a result, I think that's where we apply Gale, correct?
Yes.
That, so if there isn't, if we find that, then Gale forces, requires us to approve the special permit. And then we have to, or the finding, then we have to do the special permit for the 20%.
Right, but are you going to say with the condition that
With,
the plans are not approved for the build into the paper street?
right. Conditioned inasmuch as
Our
the,
decision is based
our
on the
decision is based on the
property line.
the construction described within the property lines of the lot. I don't think we have to define the rest of that. In addition, I move to grant a special permit under, what's it, 810 point,
Floodplain special permit?
Oh,
Eight
no,
Nine. 470?
470.6F.
470.6F.
So it's a finding under 810.2.
Finding under 810.2.
Finding under 48, section 6, and a special permit under 470.6F. Right?
Yep.
Subject to the construction and the road issue.
Right, substantial improvements of existing structures legally existing in the native. Such improvements must be consistent with the requirements. Any improvements must be consistent with provisions of the state building code, and any improvement shall not affect natural drainage patterns of the water course.
And the board is assured of the conditions of the special permit.
Yes.
Great.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Oh, we had a second, too.
I'll write this one.
Okay.
I only say that because you're going to write it, I
You
know
got the
that.
last one, I got this one.
I'm happy to write it for you, Sarah.
Jeff, if you could make a stab at that, that would be wonderful.
Jeff's going to do that one. Yay.
You got it.
See if we can get Jeff to stick around.
Did you need, did you need any of these
right.
back? Copies? You're all set.
Thanks,
We give
Paul.
you guys what you,
Do you want plans? Do you want plans? Do they want plans?
yeah, have plenty of them.
All right.
Okay.
If you're gonna go to the planning board or somewhere else, they usually, you need more
You want
copies.
us to take them?
Bunny Lane.
Yeah. As long as we have four.
Hard bargain.
As long as we're running.
Thanks, Jeff.
But that goes back to that question we had 2 months ago about the lot, and they were referencing in the plan that it was from the center of the right-of-way. Why are you referencing the center of the right-of-way? And that's obviously why.
Third application, Christopher Pratt of 6 Spalding Avenue in Scituate requests a special permit or finding in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, to construct an addition adding more than 20% to the gross floor area of the non-conforming single-family dwelling at 11 Bunny Lane in Scituate. Assessor's map 55, block 2, parcel 12A.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. We don't have any paper roads to deal with, so we don't have to worry about stairs or anything.
You just gotta state your name.
Chris Pratt. This is simple. We are increasing by more than 20%. We are not increasing any of the pre-existing nonconformities. Basically, what we're looking for is we're taking a home and trying to make a little more first floor living for an older couple. The issue on the plot plan is the rear setback. If you notice, we are at 18.2, I believe. We are not going outside of that. We're actually less than that with the addition on the rear setback. The nonconformities are the rear and the front being 50.31, but because it's pre-existing and we have enough frontage up by the house itself, I think that we're fine. Do you have any questions?
I have just sort of a esoteric question, I suppose. I didn't quite understand the difference in the lot width. I mean, I read it, but it's sort of like, how are you doing that then?
Well, because it's an odd-shaped lot, there's a bylaw that says that you can measure it parallel to the house.
Parallel to the house?
Yes. You
Okay.
can measure it within reason. You can measure it in a few different directions. Parallel to the house gives us plenty on the 125. We have 126 and a half at that point. The lot obviously is I think you said pork chop lot, Ed?
That's similar.
Yeah, so, if you try to go parallel to the frontage, you lose that 125 almost immediately,
Right.
you know? In speaking with Bob a little bit and with Morris Engineering, they thought that bylaw, taking into consideration the odd-shaped lot would cover that.
That's where you have the 126.5 in
Correct,
front of the porch.
correct.
Yeah, down from 120. How was it measured before then, to get the 129?
Parallel to the 50 feet of frontage, which is.
Oh, this way, so it was measured this way?
Yeah.
Oh, it actually makes it larger, but it doesn't really matter, because it's, just doesn't matter.
Right, right.
Yeah, okay.
And they're on town sewer, Kent Street?
No, they're on septic system.
Septic, all right. And the septic location?
The location is, I think I didn't put it in your packet. We are well outside of that 10 feet from the
All
tank.
right, so you're not gonna interfere?
We're not gonna interfere.
Okay.
That screen porch is the closest thing to it, on the front of the house, next to the covered
Okay.
porch. And that's on piers anyway, but we still have way more than 10 feet.
I guess, I mean, and again, it doesn't matter one direction or the other, I think, but I'm a little bit, your screen porch is obviously a covered porch.
Correct.
Why is that not included in the square foot calculation, Bob? Because it could be enclosed completely, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it would not change substantially the case that's being made.
No, I don't think so at all.
We're going for over 20%
Right.
increase anyway, so
Right,
We're at,
23 or 24, 25.
right.
It normally would be included because it's roofed, you're right.
Right, so normally it should be included, yeah,
I
okay,
want to protect himself with that.
right. Okay,
And I can see how the lot width changed as well, because the original width was actually measured farther back from the street to the
Correct.
house. And now you've moved the house a little closer to the street, so the lot next down in that case to a slightly less dimension.
Oh, yeah, I barely see it here, actually. It says 131.1 lot width. Do you see
Right.
it in the real pale? But
Yeah.
yet,
But because that
I
corner.
don't know where
of-
Greg went,
it
that's
would
what I was
hit the
gonna ask
corner
him.
of
He's
the
got it at 129.
But that corner of the house has moved closer to the street and closer to the side, well, side doesn't matter, but closer to the street. So if you go parallel to Bunny Lane, you've significantly reduced that.
Correct.
So by turning it and going parallel to the house, you
regain
maintain
some
it.
of that reduction.
Yeah. Very good.
But the nonconformity in the rear is not being increased.
Right.
I guess the question is it being intensified?
Yeah, I mean, I think it, you know, by a kind of, I mean, by that Bjorklund versus Norwell, it's being intensified, but the issue is
He's
it-
also reducing
to the
some of it,
extent of
too.
it. No, he's not reducing anything, because he's leaving,
The yellow, isn't that?
yeah, but he's not
Oh.
reducing the, I mean, it's still there. I think it intensifies,
This
but,
is an intensification.
for me, it would be-
It's
Yeah.
extending.
But what about here?
you know,
That's
certainly
It's
not
redu-
to,
It's less, but it's
Right.
still an intensification. It's
Yeah.
within the area of the setback, it's still an
But
intensification.
all increases would intensify it, right? Any increase
Almost.
on any house.
almost anyone, absolutely,
Right.
you know.
S-
But I think the issue is it substantially more detrimental,
Right.
and
No,
I don't think so.
we have had issues in the past where very similar kind of an increase we felt was substantially detrimental because it was along a lot line that was closer to an existing dwelling or, you know, other things come into play. Everything, that's why we do this, because everyone is individual and special.
Absolutely.
completely
We're all
understand.
special, right?
Yeah. I feel special, I'm all alone.
So,
Is there an audience, any questions?
Any questions from the audience?
good.
Bob, you're all set then. Do we have a motion?
All right, I'll do this one, okay. I move that we find that the requested special permit / finding to construct an addition by adding more than 20% to the gross floor area of the non-conforming single-family dwelling at 11 Bunny Lane as represented on the plan from Morse Engineering dated August 31st, 2017. That we find that that to the extent the nonconformities are intensified, that they are not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing home, and that we grant the special permit. Does that cover it all?
Yeah. Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If it's helpful, I do have a decision here. That I
You don't, do you?
do.
Do you? Sure.
If you could actually.
Email it to
Email
Ann.
it
I
to
will email
Latroy.
it to Ann. All right. Super, thank you very much.
Oh, who's gonna take that one then?
I'll take that one.
There you go.
I might even take the next one.
I aim to please, thank you very much.
Thanks, good.
Okay, what's next? Rebecca Road. A lot of issues with this. Oh, boy. So, okay, so,
I know, but I'm gonna screw it up.
If you screw it up, you won't be the first person,
Count on that.
and not the last.
Mary J. Bollier of 77 Rebecca Road in Scituate requested special permit or finding under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, to raise and reconstruct pre-existing non-conforming dwelling at 77 Rebecca Road in Scituate. Assessors map 46, block 1, gross floor area by more than 20%.
So, we were here before.
You probably just, for formality, it was just state your name.
Oh,
one more
Mary
time.
Bollier.
Thank you.
We were here before, and you approved our plan to remodel. But in meeting with, similar to the folks before, in meeting with builders, it became clear to us that to lift the house and put cement piers, that it was gonna be more cost-effective to raise the house. And so now we'll do wooden pilings and reconstruct the house. The design for the reconstruct is the
Rebuild,
rebuild.
right, so it's going from excuse me, hi, I'm Charlie Ruddy.
Charlie's my partner in crime.
Right, it started off as a elevate and reconstruct, and we want to do the same thing, but it's a raise and rebuild. Right, Bob? Did I get that right? After enough of these meetings?
But the-
Raise and
Right,
reconstruct.
so,
Yeah, but the
a raise and
plan,
reconstruct, okay.
R-A-Z.
R-A-Z-E,
Right,
thank you,
R-A-Z-E.
right, okay.
but the plan is exactly the same. It's the same design,
Same design,
exactly the same, well, almost exactly the same design. There are a
except a little
couple,
more new wood.
well, yeah, new wood, and, yeah, but essentially, it's the same footprint.
Same location.
Same footprint, same location. The only difference is knock down the old, put the wooden pilings in, build the house, as opposed to lift the house, do the cement piers, put the house down, and then completely renovate it.
There's actually one other change, which is since we're gonna take the house down, and there was 7 feet to play with that we were under tolerances on.
Right.
We decided to go up it's a VE 16, zoning, so it has to be 16 feet for FEMA and 18 feet for the Commonwealth. So the plans were to go the extra 2 feet, make it 20 feet.
Yeah.
Which still kept us under the maximum building height of the overall building, so, other than that, same footprint.
Did you have any questions for these?
I seem to recall we had a lot of discussion about a little roof overhang or something, and that's not in the question anymore, right? We're finished with that one?
I have amnesia about that. I don't remember anything.
I think we're more conforming on every dimension except about 3 inches in what would be the northwest corner. So, looking at the survey, we're non-conforming by about, we have about a 1.9 feet on the south side of the property, and that's being increased to be more conforming, up to about 8-something feet. And the offset from the street is a couple of inches further back. The offset from the rear of the house is shades of an inch one way or the other. And on the northwest corner, it goes from 9.1, it goes from, what are the numbers here? It's 0.2 of a foot is what it's different. So it goes from 9.66 feet to 9.47 feet.
So the size of the box is the same, the box is moving inches within the lot line, back or to the side a little bit,
Yeah, it's the effect of squaring it up.
yeah.
I'm just trying to see the, all right. And yes, we're getting rid of that porch that was still there before, that we were talking about whether or not you could put a roof on it. The one on the right, you're taking that little bit off in the new construction. On the Rebecca Road side, on the right-hand side, that your side yard setback is 1.91.
Right.
And that was what the
Right.
big discussion was, could you put a roof over that? Because
Right.
if you did, that would be, so we're not,
Nope.
we're out of that, we're at a proposed 8.15.
Correct.
Yes.
That issue's gone. The straightening it out is slightly, years ago, they told me the word de minimis, and I love it, it's great. It's like,
That is a good one,
it
yes.
sounds like that's what this would fit into that. And basically, it sounds like we probably just have the old permit, we can change it from reconstruct to raise and reconstruct,
Raise and reconstruct.
so.
But I thought the plans are slightly different.
Well,
The
the setbacks are going to be slightly different, but it's extremely minor.
Right, right,
So,
right.
but
The
it's-
plans were the same.
Yeah. The plans for
are
the
same. Plans
construction.
can't be the same if it's changed.
Well, I think less the portion over here that they eliminated, but I think it's the same plans they were to build. Am I
It's the
correct?
same plan as the plan when we were going to lift the house and rebuild.
And remodel.
But because they're lifting at that portion of the front deck that was part of the existing foundation is no longer going to be. So it disappears. Other than that, it's the same basic plan we had before. So,
One question I have is whether or not we require this increase calculation to be certified by an engineer. I believe we always have.
What, the square foot calculation?
Yeah, the increase in the square footage. I mean, what we have is a building location plan,
Yep.
and we have all these building plans. But it needs, I think it needs to be just, you know, we've always required the engineer to certify the numbers on the increase, which should not be a big deal.
Can we put that in as part of the permit?
Can we put that what?
Have that,
As
Put
a
in-
condition of the permit?
yes.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't hold it up,
Yeah, okay.
you know, for that. I mean, I think it's a formality that we've always required, just to make sure that that engineering-wise, the calculations are correct. Which, again, I'm sure.
understand what we're asking for?
Just the
You
existing.
follow what's being requested?
We'll require the existing square footage and then the proposed square footage as part of the permit application, just so that's listed in the percentage of increase.
I know you did it,
That
but
it
the
was-
the engineer needs to do it.
Yeah, it was certified. It's in our previous pile of paperwork. It was the worksheet that the engineer certified this and that.
Okay, so if it's part of that, then can we just grab it out of the old permit? I mean, the old file? Do you have the whole file? Is it just everything all in one for every property? No, okay.
We'd be happy to have it as a contingency in the order. of
Yeah,
conditions.
yeah,
Yeah, there's
and if
just-
we have it, it's just a matter of moving, copying it and moving over.
Yeah.
If everything's
Okay.
the same, you know?
Great.
I'm still not exactly sure why you're back here, though.
Thank you.
You and us both, but that's okay.
It's okay.
Are there
We're
any questions from the
happily
audience?
here.
But that's okay.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It was different enough. We were told it was different enough, so we went back to conservation and we went back to you guys and just
I'm
make
sure,
sure that
yeah.
when we go to get building permits, that we've done everything we're supposed to do.
Right, right. Well, we want you to do that,
Thank
so.
you.
I'm sure conservation was happier to see wood piles than they would have been to see the
Concrete.
concrete piers. They
Yeah.
prefer wood pilings for.
They do?
this
And why is that?
Good question. I guess you'd have to ask Amy, but
Hmm.
I think there's,
I think it's the
Less-
footings involved in,
right, there's less digging involved. You just drive it straight down. For a concrete pier, you've got to dig a big hole and form a large footing before you can start pouring the vertical part of the pier.
Okay.
do we have a motion?
Do you have any audience questions?
Oh, yeah, we're in that.
Move to find that the proposed raise and reconstruct of the dwelling at 77 Rebecca Road in accordance with the plan dated May 17th, 2017 by Environmental Engineering Technologies. Will not create any new nonconformities, and to the extent that it may intensify a nonconformity, it is not substantially detrimental to the existing, that the increase of 20%, of more than 20% to the gross square footage, is not significantly detrimental, and therefore move to grant the special permit to raise and reconstruct.
And barring the applicant's submittal of the
And
engineer's sheet.
contingent upon the
increase in-
applicant's submittal of certified engineer stamped dimensional increase, existing and proposed gross square footage.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll do that one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Eddie's. Asked Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie. The room is dwindling.
You made a boo-boo?
Steve, how are you?
Hi, John, how are you?
Good.
I want to do, I should do this one.
So we're gonna need a unanimous vote, I take it? It's only 3 members.
Michael and Michelle Keeley,
How are you,
trustees
Sarah?
of 74 Walnut Hill Drive in Scituate, request a special permit finding under Mass General Law, Chapter
You probably caught what I caught.
and to object to 10.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaws to raise and reconstruct pre-existing non-conforming dwelling at 119 Jericho Road in Scituate. Assessors map 46, block 12, parcel 22F, adding more than 20% to the gross floor area.
Steve?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, I'm Attorney Steve Guard for the applicant. With me this evening is Greg Morse from Morse Engineering, and in the audience is Michael Feely, the owner of the property. So before you this evening, as it was read in the public notice, is an application for a special permit to raise and reconstruct a single-family residential dwelling at 119 Jericho Road. I have submitted various materials, the application, of course, but I guess I'd like to start first by just directing your attention to the setback table that I prepared as well. I think that's probably the first place to start. It's it's actually, looks a lot like the legend on the plan, but I did that separately so that we could see what we have. The front yard setback, of course, is 30 feet. We have existing 0 and 6.8. When we're finished, it would be 4.8 and 14, so both of those would be improved. The left side setback would be 8. We have existing 48 feet. That will go to 8.5 feet. It will comply. The 8-foot right side setback is required, but we have 3.2, and there will be no change. Mr. Morse will point out to you that particular 3.2 setback is actually at a point. It doesn't run along the building or a sideline. It lends itself to an oddly shaped portion of the sideline of the lot. The rear is 20 feet required. We have 86. We'll have 56, so there's lots of room in the back. Lot width will actually 85 existing. We're going to improve that to 93 because we're going to be relocating the house, obviously. Area of the lot stays, there's no change to the lot area. The house is being expanded from, existing house is 1,188 square feet. The proposed house is 3,290 square feet. So that would be, under your calculation, a 177% increase. So that brings me to the, my next sort of exhibit in my packet for you folks is the assessor's field cards, but I've summarized those cards in, bear with me, a table which shows that I prepared called Exhibit A. It's sort of a list of properties along Jericho Road. I was impressed to find that it's a trend along this particular part of our town, this road, that these houses are being raised and reconstructed and expanded.
The applicant's home is down towards the bottom, and you can see that at the 3,290 square feet, it kind of runs in the mix with all of them. You've got, of course, the Tefanction home at 7,500 square feet, and there's a couple other homes at 4,900. I think that's, trying to remember whose house that is, but it's down the way on the right, on the beach side. So they range between, I tried to stay in the 2,900 to 7,500 square foot. So this is not a odd house for the neighborhood. Your findings this evening would need to be one that would suggest that the special permit could issue on the basis that this particular proposed structure is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. So, as you know, the existing structure is an old, rather antiquated, low-slung, single-story home that actually encroaches on Damon Road. It actually does. Of course, we'll be curing that encroachment as well. There are photographs of the subject property as it exists today, as well as the proposed elevations, side and front elevations of the house. The configuration of the house on the lot is to, in such a way as to move the existing dwelling and reconstruct a new dwelling in an area that would obviously enhance the setback nonconformities, or I should say, improve the nonconformities, as well as offer the family a rear yard for privacy purposes to the back. Also, position the home in such a way that would allow us to have sufficient off-street parking. There is one thing on the plan that I didn't notice when I filed it, is that I forgot that Mr. Morse has a 195% increase. The difference in the two areas is the mechanical room, and because this house is going to be of a floodplain house, the numbers that I got were from the architect, and they generally don't count the mechanical room even on the first floor in a flood-proofed house for gross living area. So that's why we came up with, technically it's the 3,200 square feet of living space.
So that's the discrepancy of 195 versus 177.
It is, yes. At least, if you could call it a discrepancy, that's where it was an inconsistency between the plan. And Greg has provided a revised plan based on the architects identifying the correct square footage for the gross living area. So with that having been said, I'll just ask Greg to run through the engineering part of the property so that you can get a feel for the house, its structure, the location on the street, et cetera.
Good evening. For the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. To familiarize you with the plan, Jericho Road is on the right-hand side here. Damon Road is at the bottom of the plan. This is a corner lot at the intersection of Damon Road and Jericho Road. The lot itself is represented by this bold line, which is the property line. This is located in the R3 zoning district, the 10,000 square foot district. The lot itself is non-conforming with respect to lot area. Lot area here being 7,986 square feet. The existing dwelling here is located in this location. It's a light gray line. That structure itself is a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling, which, per the assessors, was constructed.
Hold on, I can get it for you.
Yeah.
I have the assessor's field card.
1800s.
It was 1860, is that right? Does that sound right?
1860.
Yeah, 1860.
So that existing building is non-conforming as well with respect to setbacks. Those setbacks being the front yard setback to Damon Road, which exists at 0 feet. The front yard setback to Jericho Road at 6.8 feet. The side yard to the abutter to the north, McCarthy, existing at 3.2 feet at this point here in the side lot line. The proposed building is what's highlighted here in bold. It includes a covered porch. We took our measurements to the covered porch. The building is back 8 feet further from that covered porch. But we brought the building into further compliance along both frontages. At Jericho Road, we're going from 6.8 feet existing to 14 feet proposed. At Damon Road, we're going from 0 feet existing to 4.8 feet proposed. The side yard setback along Damon Road is in compliance with the bylaw at 8.5 feet. The rear yard setback is in compliance at 56 feet. We've maintained the setback at the pinch point along the side lot corner here, which is at 3.2, any further or any closer. The location of it doesn't create any new nonconformities. It brings the dwelling into more compliance with the setbacks that will currently exist.
Thank you.
But I think by way of a point of clarification, when Greg was going through it, the sideline setback is a sideline setback off of Damon Road, not on Damon Road. You know, we have to, with a corner lot, you're supposed to have a front yard setback on both. So to make it clear that we're not moving, on the Damon Road side, the property is going to be, that's where the encroachment is. That's the one that goes from 0 to 4.8, just so you know that. The required is 30, but it's gonna be, go from 0 to 4.8.
Again, kind of an academic question, but I'm just curious. In your package, you have a plan of land in Scituate dated January of 1946.
Oh, yes.
And there's also a plan dated April of 1921. I see the lot, and I see two different structures on the lot, at least according to these plans. And they both appear to be different from the one that's on there now. I'm not questioning that it's pre-existing,
Right.
but I'm just curious if you had any insight as to why those plans all seem to change. It may have just gotten moved when the road layout
Yeah.
dropped in.
So the shape of the 1921 structure is very similar in shape to the 1946 one. I don't know the history there, but I would imagine it was relocated at some point between 1921 and 1946. And that structure is close in proximity to where the existing sits today on the plans you see.
Well, the 1921 plan shows that a giant portion of the structure is actually in the Damon Road and Jericho Road layout.
Right. So I'm guessing it got moved.
I would surmise that they moved the house back, and I guess they didn't go far enough, because we still encroach a little bit. Actually, what encroaches is it's 0, and the stoops encroach, right? There's some steps, I think, that actually encroach. So they actually moved it to the street line. So that would be an explanation of why.
Yeah, if you look at the two maps too, you can see the proximity to the side setback. And in the 46 map, it's like been moved, like you said.
Exactly.
Up and back.
Up and over, so.
Yeah. No, that was my expectation too, but when we're citing the fact that it was built in 1860, and then we have two plans more recent than that, I'm going with the 1860. I don't have a problem with that, but
Either way, it predates zoning. So in 1946.
even 1946 predates.
Even if it didn't, it'd been there more than 10 years, and as you may recall, Governor Baker signed into law last fall a revision to Section 7 of 40A that now grants structures over 10 years of age 40A Section 6 rights. It's great. It's a real good thing for us.
Right.
Change in rules. Oh, as I said, it was an academic question, but
Well,
other than that-
I hope, Mr. Tibbetts, that we gave you an academic answer.
I'm always educated by the representations before the board. I don't have any other questions.
Sarah?
1860 requires a,
Historic Commission review.
right,
I
right,
did.
right.
Yes.
The second, for the proposal that we received tonight, did Annie get a copy of that for the file?
Yes.
Yes.
Updated, okay, good. Bob, did you?
No,
Pretty strong. Any questions from the audience?
What's the ultimate height gonna be? Which
Oh.
way is it gonna be?
It will comply with the bylaw.
The maximum height,
It's 35.
now is
feet.
35 feet.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, Greg and I were talking about the table that I did, and we both decided that a good addition to this table would be the height, you know, the existing height and the proposed height and the required height, but
Well,
I actually didn't.
I think
include
that's a
that.
great idea. Annie?
You're gonna make me do the table over again?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
constant flux. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I
No,
thought that
that's
would
a
be a
good
good thing,
idea.
even for me, just to talk about it. If you look at the architectural plans that I submitted, I think it may be difficult to read the actual building height.
They have the foot.
Can you see it?
The floor height, but that's,
Well, it's essentially, you get 12 foot, you get 11 and something, 11 and something, and 12 and something, and the foundation,
The
so
foundation, so it would be.
it's about
yeah,
33, but it's gonna be just under the, be 3 floors,
Yeah.
yes.
and be just under the 35 feet.
Maybe it's 2.5 stories technically, yeah, under the bylaw. But it will obviously comply.
2.5 stories and
Side.
Any other questions? Well, that leads us to, anyone wants to make a motion?
move to find that the construction is proposed in the raise and reconstruct in the packet, in the plan by Morse Engineering dated 9/21 and revised 10/19/17. Will not create any new nonconformities, that it will be, that any intensification will not be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood, and that the increase in gross floor space will not, floor area of approximately 177% will not be detrimental to the neighborhood. Therefore, we find under 40A Section 6 and grant the special permit under 810.2 F, no, 2B, 2B or not
Just
2B?
just put point two.
Point 2, 810.2.
Covered that whole.
You don't got it wrong, for sure.
And
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
No.
Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, folks.
You're
I
drafting.
will draft a decision for you, a proposed decision for you.
Fabulous. For the audience who may not be familiar, when we're asking attorneys if they would draft a proposed decision, it is that we would go home and do it when we have the time, and it will take more time, and it's very helpful to have a professionally drafted decision for our consideration.
It is not, however, me deciding the case.
No, it's clearly not that the attorney is making the decision or deciding it, just simply drafting
You review the draft.
for us.
That's why I qualified it by saying a proposed decision.
Yes.
Thanks, folks. Good night.
Thank you, Steve.
I see. I wonder if Paul's coming back in.
You might have to do this one.
Sure. Sure.
Ann Foley, trustee of 18 Birch Lane in Scituate, requests a special permit finding in accordance with the
Back
Mass
again.
General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and/or Section 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to allow the relocation of the existing single-family dwelling located at 9 Ocean Avenue, Scituate. Assessors map 8, block 3, parcel 13.
Paul, would you like to?
Ready?
Sure.
Thank you. My name is Paul Mirabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicant of this property, John Foley. The applicant owns the existing house on a lot on the corner of Collier Ave Extension and Ocean Avenue. The existing house is shown in the crosshatched area. The purpose of this application is to seek approval to pick the house up, move it closer to Collier Avenue, using the average setback table. Average setback of the house in Colorado is 14.5 feet, we're proposing a setback of 15 feet. And Ocean Avenue, the existing house, is 23.5 feet to the street line on Ocean Ave. And what we're asking to do is to push it back to 24 feet, push it back 6 inches. The plan is to completely renovate the interior and exterior. This is a house that's been in the family for, I think, going back to the early 1900s. What they're gonna do is to renovate the interior and the exterior. They're gonna pick the house up and put a new foundation under it. Future plans may call for a garage in this area here. To do that, the old garage in the back would go, and we'd have to maintain an 8-foot setback for the new one. So by moving the house to the, closer to Collier Ave, using that setback, and by pushing it back, we only push it back 6 inches. The reason being, if we had to put a septic system in, we have to go in this area here. Ross Engineering did the septic systems on this lot, and we're doing this one, so we don't want the soils away. So this is where the system would go. So what we're asking to do is to pick the house up and put it in a location that's slightly further back from the existing setback on Ocean Ave. We'll also use the average setback figures for the setback on Collier Ave, which we can do as a matter of right. So,
I'm sorry, are you saying Collier Ave or Collier Ave Extension?
I'm sorry, Collier Ave Extension.
Yeah.
So you're not asking anything about the garage right now?
No.
That's not it. That's not it.
They may or may do that, but that's not, you know.
Yeah.
What we did was to move the house to the Collier Ave Extension, you know, using the average setback, so if they did do a garage, they would have room to put it in there.
And what type of foundation are they putting in?
Be a poured concrete,
Any change in elevation?
no,
Oh, so the same elevation, same steps, or whatever down?
Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, the, being a corner lot, Collier Ave extension should really have a, if it were not an if you weren't using the average, it would be a 30-foot setback from
that's
Collier
correct.
Ave extension.
That's correct.
But because of the average setback, it's really only you said 14.5?
Yes.
And those the calculations are there, okay. I'm looking at the table, just to try to clarify for our purposes. Under the chart, it indicates the right side as 8-foot required. It should actually say 14.5 as average, because that would be the Collier
From,
Ave extension.
the gauge you look at it from Ocean Ave?
Yeah, I mean, because you had it as 27.8, and you have the existing here as 27.8, so I'm sure that's where it's supposed to be. But it's saying required as right side, because it's a side yard on Collier Ave extension, it should actually be 14.5 probably.
I don't actually agree with you, because I think that would be, I mean, the bylaw says 8. I think
But
under
it's
this
not a
circumstances.
It's not a side yard, it's a front
Huh?
yard. It's a front yard, it's a corner lot.
It's a street lot.
Oh, I see what you're saying, so you said it should actually say
It
30 feet.
should actually say 30.
Got
But because of the average setback, the requirement is not 30, it's 14. The bylaw allows for the average
The
setback as
bylaw
an
allows it,
alternative.
but I think the requirement is still, there's an exception, so the bylaw, I think it should stay, as you
Sorry,
said,
should
30.
Then should I say 30 and then, or slash 14.5 average? So,
Do the
either way, it's,
Right, but.
either way,
you know, a
they're
lot of people
proposed is within it.
Don't do the average, pull it, so.
Yeah, that's all.
It's not-
Just, I'm correct in my interpretation of, right,
Yeah.
okay. That's all I,
Yeah, got it.
so you're still within the,
That's
your
right.
proposed is within the average setback. Your left side is within the required. Your front yard is a reduction in the nonconformity from 23.5 to 24. Required is 30. Rear yards, is well within the requirement. The lot area is within the requirement, and your lot width and frontage you can't do anything about. They're going to remain the same, 84.85 instead of 100
Right.
as required. So,
Interesting.
Sarah, do you think so?
No?
A couple of people in the audience. So.
Bob, did you?
No, you could have stated it slightly differently and made two front yards, one on Collier Avenue Extension, one on Ocean.
But the average is.
But it's still, it all works. I mean, this is clearly within the regulations of the zoning bylaws.
Yeah.
This question, go ahead.
Wind Cardinal 5 Ocean Ave. Without a plan, I mean, they may or may not tear the garage down. I mean, I'm right next door, and I'd kind of like to know what the plan is.
There's
Why they're moving it over if they're not going to do a garage?
They're gonna put a new foundation under the house.
I understand that.
Yeah, either way. So the plan was to pick the house up and move it in location. So in the future, if they were to put a garage in, this existing garage actually encroaches. Is this you, Margot?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, this existing garage is actually over the property line.
I know.
If they were to tear this down and build a new one, they would not be able to build in this location. They would have to put it at least 8 feet in from the property line. Plus, there's a small curve here, so the garage would have to come forward, and would have to go over. Putting the house here, there'd just be enough room to meet that side yard setback in the future, and have a garage that's about 24 feet wide. And this area here would be large enough for a septic system. But there's, nothing's being planned for this.
That's what.
I said, there's no plans to do anything with the garage at this point.
So before us,
No written plans.
this, if you have a name, just an address,
I'm
please.
Jonathan Lee, I live diagonally across the street. So we're talking about moving the house about 12 feet closer to Collier Ave Extension, is that how I understand it?
Yes.
Yes. And if this is permitted to happen, is there anything preventing them from coming back and tripling the size of the house or whatever? And it just, given the other projects I've seen him do, I'm concerned about this house changing dramatically at some point.
Well, he hasn't asked for any increase in the percentage of the house size, so if he were to increase that by more than 20%, they would have to come back to us. So right now, they're not asking for that.
It just seems like it's stacking the deck to do the next move, which.
It could be, but they have, we can't vote on the next move because it's not in front of us tonight.
None of us know anything about what's going on over there, and so that's why our neighborhood is so well represented here tonight.
Yeah, but as it stands right now, what is in front of us is a proposed relocation of the existing house with a new foundation under it, pushed to closer to Collier Ave Extension. Yes.
Mary Ellen Higgins, 12 Collier Ave. I just wanted to confirm that the plan will still orient the house when it's moved so that the front of the house is facing Ocean Ave and not facing Collier Ave Extension.
But by the plan submitted, the house isn't turning, it's just moving, so the faces will remain the same as they do now on the streets.
I think it's valid to point out, though, that what's being asked for of this board is they aren't really looking for any significant relief. They're here because the current existing structure does not meet the zoning regulation. If the existing structure were to, if they came before us to take down the existing structure and put, they wouldn't even have to be before us to take down the existing structure and put a new dwelling on the lot within the legal setbacks and within all the other components of the bylaw. The only thing they would have to do is they would be further back from Oceanside, from Ocean Ave. In the other respects, they have a right to build within that building envelope on the lot. This is a relatively minor request, and the applicant will be investing a certain degree of money associated with a new foundation. It would seem to be a short-sighted approach. It isn't necessary that it be a staged thing. They're not looking for a little relief here so they can get a little relief later and a little relief later. the relief that they're asking for is really just so that this structure can stay more or less in its proximity to Ocean Ave and take advantage of the side yard that they have a right to build upon on the Collier Avenue extension side. It's within the bylaw. If they didn't want to remain encroaching on the front yard setback on Ocean Ave, if they were willing to pull it back that additional 6 feet, I don't think they'd even have to be before us.
No.
They could do it with just a building permit. Because the lot is conforming, the frontage is conforming. Frontage was conforming. No, the frontage is not, no, they still have to be before us because the frontage is not conforming.
74.
Yep. Yeah, they could do frontage on Collier Ave, and because it's the average front yard setback on Collier Ave, they could use Collier Ave as their frontage and do it,
Collier Ave extension.
the Collier Ave extension, and do it without any relief from the board.
Is there any other questions?
I do have one more question.
Sure.
If they get into this and realize that the
name.
house,
Just your name one more
oh,
time?
Jonathan Lee, sorry,
And
14 Ocean Ave. If they get into this and realize that the house is not worth moving, that they want to raise and rebuild, does that come before the board again, or is that, can they do exact, kind of what I would be?
they've got to come back before us if they change their mind.
If they came back before us to basically take down the structure and rebuild it in kind on the same footprint, it would be very much like the application that was before us earlier. It's basically a gimme, you know, you're going through the process. If they were to decide in the process of this project that what they want to do doesn't make any sense anymore, and they wanted to build it within the setbacks, they wouldn't have to come back to us, because they're not looking for any relief. They're building within the building inspector, code enforcement officer would issue a building permit if it met all the requirements. They would have to still be before us because of they've got the frontage.
20% increase, but there's still
No, but
requirement because
they've got,
it'd be conforming.
they've got the area, they just don't have the frontage, and if they use Collier Road Extension as the frontage, there is no nonconformity. There's no reason to be before us at all.
Okay, thank you.
Move to find under 48, Section 6, that the raise and reconstruction of the property as described,
Raising it, though.
no, excuse me, the relocation of the property, excuse me, the relocation of the property, of the dwelling at 9 Ocean Ave, as described on a plan September 19, 2017, by Ross Engineering. Does not create any new nonconformities, and that to the extent it may intensify a nonconformity, it is not considered substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Do we have a second
Second.
discussion? Being none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think it's my turn. Okay.
No, you got one already.
No, that was being written by someone, I think, wasn't it?
It was, no, oh, Chris Pratt? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh. Oh.
Hey, John.
We each only have one.
Yeah,
It's pretty good. I feel like it's,
that was a win. Do we have any minutes to approve? And the minutes were from September
Gotcha.
21st.
from when? September?
I would move to accept the
She's
minutes
so efficient.
as mailed and emailed. I can only vote really on the first one because I left, so,
Yeah, we don't have that's right.
but can we vote on the other ones without the third?
Was Anthony was here?
He was a
Yes.
voting member
Yeah,
of
when
the two applications.
Do you mind waiting? I don't know. I'm kind of worried about it, though.
Me too.
All right.
I think it's probably
Best to
Kinda
wait
have to wait.
for next month.
Yeah.
Okay, just to cover it.
I know, it'll upset her apple cart of being so efficient.
Was there anything in review that we had to discuss, or any other dates briefly coming up?
Just remind everybody about our meeting with Jay Tellerman on 40B,
Yeah,
Is that a,
November 7th. What?
not a public, but,
Oh, it's not a meeting. Oh, Wednesday, yeah. Then, yeah, you have to post that,
so the
Right.
November meeting will be on Wednesday,
right.
the third Wednesday,
Tell the crowd.
right? The third Wednesday of November, we'll have a meeting instead of the third Thursday.
Right.
But that will go back on December to our regular Thursday night meetings.
Right.
And that's it for tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.